The crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across the marble floor of the Monaco Grand Casino, where fortunes changed hands as easily as champagne flutes passed between manicured fingers. Ronda Rousey adjusted the sleeve of her black evening gown, feeling distinctly out of place among the oil barons and tech moguls who treated million-dollar bets like pocket change. She'd been invited to this charity auction by her manager, who insisted that networking with the ultra-wealthy would open doors beyond the octagon and wrestling ring. At the center of the room's attention stood Khalil al-Rashid, a man whose petroleum empire had made him one of the youngest billionaires in the Middle East. His laugh carried across the marble expanse like the sound of money itself, rich, confident, and slightly condescending. He held court near the auction podium, regaling a circle of admirers with stories of his latest acquisitions, a Monet for his yacht, a rare Ferrari for his collection, a small island off the coast of Greece for his amusement. "The problem with Americans," Khalil declared in accented English, his voice carrying just enough volume to ensure nearby conversations paused, "is that they believe the world revolves around their language. They travel everywhere, expecting others to accommodate their linguistic limitations. Hey, if you're watching this and you've ever felt underestimated because of where you're from or what people assume about you, hit that subscribe button right now and tell me in the comments what country you're watching from. Smash that hype button, because what happens next is going to completely flip your expectations. Trust me, you don't want to miss this moment that's about to unfold." Ronda sipped her mineral water, listening, as Khalil continued his monologue. She'd encountered this type before, men who mistook wealth for wisdom, who confused privilege with intelligence. In the fighting world, such arrogance usually preceded a spectacular fall. "I speak 7 languages fluently," Khalil boasted, straightening his custom-tailored jacket. "Arabic, English, French, German, Mandarin, Russian, and Spanish. It's essential for global business. Most Americans can barely manage their own tongue properly." A ripple of nervous laughter circulated among his audience, many of whom were indeed Americans trying to curry favor with the oil magnate. Ronda noticed how they nodded along, complicit in their own diminishment, trading dignity for the possibility of investment opportunities. "Fascinating," said Margaret Whitmore, a tech heiress whose startup had recently gone public. "I've always admired polyglots. It must give you such an advantage in negotiations." Khalil's smile widened, revealing teeth as perfect as his public image. "Language is power. When you can speak to people in their native tongue, you control the conversation. You understand their cultural nuances, their weaknesses. It's why I've never lost a major deal." Ronda set down her glass and moved closer to the group, her fighter's instincts recognizing an opportunity. She'd spent years being underestimated, first as a woman in combat sports, then as an athlete trying to transition to entertainment. But she'd also spent those years learning, growing, absorbing knowledge that went far beyond what people expected from someone known primarily for her ability to break arms. "9," she said quietly, the single word cutting through Khalil's grandiose speech like a blade through silk. The billionaire turned toward her, his expression shifting from amusement to mild irritation at the interruption. "Excuse me?" "I speak 9 languages," Ronda repeated, her voice steady and clear. "You mentioned 7. I thought you might be interested in the comparison." Khalil's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Ah, the famous Ronda Rousey. I should have recognized you. Tell me, do you count trash talk as one of your languages? Because that seems to be the primary dialect in your profession." The circle of onlookers shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension building between the two. Ronda smiled, the same calm expression she'd worn before dismantling opponents who'd underestimated her technique. "English, obviously," she began, her tone conversational. "Spanish, which I learned growing up in California. French, from my time training in Europe. German, because I studied abroad in college before focusing on judo full-time. Khalil's smirk remained fixed, but something flickered behind his eyes, a recognition that this wasn't going where he'd expected. Japanese, which is essential when you're serious about judo and martial arts philosophy, Ronda continued. Portuguese, because I spent significant time training in Brazil. Russian, from working with Eastern European coaches and fighters. The billionaire's expression began to change, the condescending amusement giving way to something approaching concern. He'd built his reputation on being the smartest person in any room, the one with the most comprehensive knowledge and cultural sophistication. Armenian, Ronda said, her voice gaining strength. My heritage, my grandmother's stories, the language of survival and resilience, and Arabic. The last word hit Khalil like a physical blow. His perfect composure cracked, revealing genuine shock beneath the carefully constructed facade of superiority. Arabic, he repeated, the word coming out strangled. Ronda switched languages seamlessly, her pronunciation crisp and confident as she addressed him in his native tongue. She spoke of respect, of the importance of humility, of how true strength came not from diminishing others, but from lifting them up. Her accent was slight, but unmistakably authentic, the result of months spent training with coaches from the Middle East, of late nights studying not just the language but the culture behind it. The circle of wealthy spectators watched in stunned silence as Khalil's face went through a spectrum of emotions. Surprise, embarrassment, and finally, something that looked almost like respect. Your Arabic is impressive, he admitted, switching back to English. Where did you learn? From my judo coach, Mahmoud Al-Zahra. He fled Syria in the 80s, came to America with nothing but his knowledge and his determination to build something better. He taught me that language isn't about power over others. It's about connection with them. Ronda's words carried the weight of genuine experience, of relationships built through shared struggle rather than inherited privilege. She spoke of training sessions conducted in Arabic, of learning not just vocabulary but philosophy, of understanding that true communication transcended mere words. Mahmoud used to say that every language you learn makes you a different person, she continued, not because it changes who you are, but because it reveals parts of yourself you didn't know existed. When I speak Arabic, I connect with his stories of home, his love for a country he can never safely return to. Khalil stood silent, his earlier bravado completely deflated. The man who'd built an empire on the assumption of his own superiority found himself face to face with someone whose knowledge ran deeper than his wealth, whose experiences had forged connections he could never purchase. I apologize, he said finally, the words coming out with obvious difficulty. I made assumptions about you, about Americans in general. That was inappropriate. The admission sent ripples through the assembled crowd. These were people accustomed to watching the wealthy and powerful maintain their facades at all costs, never admitting weakness or error. Khalil's public acknowledgement of his mistake carried more weight than any charitable donation. We all make assumptions, Ronda replied graciously. The question is what we do when we realize we're wrong. As the evening progressed, the dynamic in the room shifted subtly but significantly. Conversations became more genuine, less performative. People began sharing stories of their own linguistic journeys, their cultural discoveries, their moments of humility in foreign lands. Khalil approached Ronda later, away from the crowd and cameras. I've been thinking about what you said, about your coach. I'd like to make a donation to refugee assistance programs, specifically for those fleeing Syria and other conflict zones. That's generous, Ronda said. But don't do it because you feel guilty about tonight. Do it because it's right. He nodded slowly, understanding the distinction. Your coach, Mahmoud, is he still teaching? He runs a small dojo in Los Angeles, teaches kids from the neighborhood, Many of them immigrants like he was. He doesn't charge much, sometimes nothing at all. I'd like to meet him if that's possible, and perhaps fund a proper facility, not as charity, but as investment in the next generation. The offer was genuine, stripped of the earlier arrogance and performative generosity. Ronda saw in his eyes the same recognition she'd witnessed in herself over the years, the humbling realization that true wisdom came from acknowledging how much you didn't know. Months later, the Mahmoud Al-Zahra Cultural Center opened in East Los Angeles, a state-of-the-art facility offering martial arts training, language classes, and cultural exchange programs. The opening ceremony was conducted in 9 languages, with Ronda serving as translator and Khalil funding not just the building but ongoing scholarships for young athletes and students. "Language is a bridge," Mahmoud said during his speech, his words translated simultaneously for the diverse crowd. "Tonight, we celebrate not just the languages we speak, but the connections we build when we choose to listen to each other." Ronda stood beside her old coach, watching as children from dozens of different backgrounds practiced together on the new mats, their conversations flowing seamlessly between languages, their laughter needing no translation at all. Khalil approached them after the ceremony, his demeanor completely transformed from that night in Monaco. "I've been learning," he said simply. "Not just languages, but humility. It's harder than Arabic, but more valuable than oil." The 3 of them stood together, watching the next generation discover what Ronda had learned years ago, that true strength came not from what you could take from others, but from what you could give. The languages they spoke were just tools. The connections they built were the real treasure. As the evening wound down, Ronda reflected on the journey from that Monaco casino to this community center. She thought about assumptions challenged, bridges built, and the power of words not to dominate but to unite. Sometimes the most important victories happened not in rings or octagons, but in moments when pride gave way to understanding, when wealth bowed to wisdom, when the languages we speak became pathways to the humanity we share. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever used your knowledge not to diminish others, but to build them up, then you understand what real strength looks like. Your voice matters, your experiences have value, and the bridges you build with your words can change the world one conversation at a time. The languages you speak, whether it's 1 or 9, are tools for connection, not weapons for division.